I think that society has forever been on this path of discovering what doesn't work and having to regress back to what works. And I feel like what we've done over the last sort of 4 generations is, because of technology, we've gone way faster off track than we have in the past. Like, we've been able to go further off track. It's like you go to the beach, right? And you go for a swim and you got the shallow area and it's all safe and everything on the shallow area. But then slowly the sand drops away and it gets deep and there's a rip and it can get quite dangerous. And there's that moment where you're swimming and playing around and you kind of get to that point where it's like, oh, you get a feeling in your heart of like, oh God, I could be in danger here. I feel like we as a society are all in that space now going, whoa, this is feeling a bit unsafe. Like, only a moment ago I felt fine and we were getting closer and closer to the danger zone, but yeah, it's all right, we're fine. Whereas it feels to me like more and more people are getting that feeling in their heart and in their chests of like, this is going a bit too far. I really should start going home now.
Yeah.
Right.
Start going home. That's actually a powerful symbol right there. Like, we're all going home.
Yeah, I think we need to. I think we're just going a bit too far. And what is home? Home represents everything we've been talking about. It's about good food. It's about connection. It's about feeling part of something that's bigger and more important than the excitement of the fancy new thing.
Pete, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here. We had a good time last night.
We did.
It was fun.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been a real pleasure so far.
Yeah, it's been cool. I heard that you guys talked till pretty late at night.
Oh, we did. That's right. You peeled off early.
I wanted to be fresh for the podcast. So I went to bed.
Well, we didn't stop too late, but it was a real treat.
Yeah. And the revolution was in the air, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making the trip, and you flew all the way from the UK.
Yeah.
From London to get here, and that's really great. And then you met Chris. You're meeting Chris now.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Pete.
It's good to meet you too.
And we're at the old mill, so this is great.
Yeah, it's amazing out there. I just went for a quick walk around just this morning, and it's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, there's no snow. It's pretty rare that there's no snow at this point in time, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And Pete, you're the founder of Ooooby, right?
That's right. Yeah. I started that. It's 15 years ago now, and we've been doing it for quite a while.
And just to set the stage now, we'll come back to it again later, but can you just give the very brief what is of Ooooby so people know?
Yeah, so Ooooby, it's 4 O's. BY stands for out of our own backyards. And
I didn't know that.
Oh, there you go.
I didn't know that Ooooby standed for something.
It stands for out of our own backyards.
Nice.
And it's all about putting small scale back at the heart of the food system. And we started out with that mission, with that idea of how do we put small scale back at the heart of the food system. And we've tried a few different models first. We tried coming up with a high street sort of shop on Waiheke Island in New Zealand. That didn't really work. And then we tried working with farmers markets and sort of setting up a sort of a collective store at a farmers market to represent sort of micro scale growers. But then we found that was impeding on small scale growers' channel to market and making it harder for the people trying to make a living.
Yeah.
So then we moved to becoming like a food hub, effectively a hub in Auckland, in New Zealand, where we were representing small scale farms around Auckland and representing their product, where people could buy it and have it delivered to the door. And then we did all the logistics. We went and collected the food from the farms, we packed it into boxes, and we delivered it to the customers. And did that for 10 years. And we opened up hubs in Auckland and in Christchurch and my hometown, Sydney, in Australia. For 10 years we were doing that. But while we were doing that, we built software to make our lives easier and to automate as much of the recurring and boring, administrative tasks. And after 10 years, we were thinking, okay, I think we've got a model here that's putting small scale back at the heart of the food system. How do we replicate that? How do we take that into, more of a, not scaling it, but replicating it?
Yeah.
And that's when I moved to the UK with my wife. She's British, and the kids. And instead of doing it again, being the hub ourselves, what we did is we made the software available for farms to set up their own hubs on the farms to sell direct, and to also sell food from other neighbouring farms and artisan food producers to direct to local and regional customers.
So in that model, how does the logistic works out? How does it work out? Because now it's not just like centralizing the orders and then redistributing them. It's like...
Yeah, I mean, the way that it works is that a customer has got an online shop front that they can go to, and they can set up an account, and they can go shopping. Usually they're subscribing to a type of box, but they can also do ad hoc, casual shopping as well, and add things and so on. And then those orders are all collated by the system, and for the farm that's acting as the hub, for them to be able to then place produce harvest lists so they can harvest themselves, as well as place orders with other neighbouring farms and food producers. And then either the farm will go around and collect the food from those suppliers, or they'll be brought to the farm.
Who decides that?
Well, that's up to them.
It's up to them.
It's entirely up to them. It all depends. Sometimes I'll collect some and have others delivered. So it's all comes down to the case by case.
Okay.
And then the farm that's acting as a hub, they collate all the incoming food, pack it into the boxes, and then the software tells them everything they need to do at the time they need to do it. So it organizes all the information, and then most of them load up the orders into a van or a truck or something, farm truck or something, and they load it in, first in, last out, and then they get their phone, they stick it on a cradle, press go, and they just drive and deliver either to homes or to what we call drop sites or collection points.
Yeah.
And while they're going, they're collecting up the used boxes, and they get back and the job's done. And then the next week it happens again and again. And it's a recurring cycle.
Yeah. Just like a CSA drop off, but it's
all
organized differently.
It's organized. It's organized so that the customer has a shopping experience that is modern and professional shopping experience, where it feels like they're shopping with a modern type of outlet. And so it attracts the sorts of customers that you wouldn't otherwise attract with a standard CSA.
Yeah.
But what it does is it means that because the farm is providing an added service of packing and delivering, they're able to charge for that because that's value, and so it's an extra business model that they're stacking onto their food production enterprise. So they're able to get 100% of the retail value, of the retail price for the food that they're selling, as well as the food they're selling on behalf of others.
Yeah.
And so it's like a stacked enterprise, and their farm workers can pack boxes, and they can also do deliveries. So it gives more people more to do and more revenue for it.
Okay, so that's very different from what you described before when you were in Christchurch in New Zealand.
That's right.
So that was the first version.
That's right. That's where we learned.
And then you decided to develop another model.
We pivoted. That's the term, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we used to be the hub ourselves. We had a warehouse, or we had warehouses, and we had in those warehouses we had cool rooms and forklifts, and we were buying from local farms and doing all that ourselves. And then when I moved to the UK, thought, well, actually, we've built the digital infrastructure now to make that available to farms to do that themselves. So we were an intermediary, and now we've stepped out of that middleman position, and we have disintermediated, or given the farms the ability to do that for themselves, so to own and control their own supply chain. And by owning and controlling their own supply chain, they're not at the mercy of supermarkets or big wholesalers that either negotiate them right down or fall through on their orders and things like that. They are able to look after quite a lot of customers, but in a lot less time than it would normally take.
The logistics are all
It's all organized.
It's all organized. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I will.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Had you I'm thinking about this now. It's like you had in the first version of Ooooby.
Yep.
Were you at one point thinking, okay, well, if this grows, I'm just recreating the model where I'm the middleman, and that's not what we want. We want a decent.
Exactly what I thought when you had the warehouse. It's like that's just another middleman. In a way.
Yeah.
So
and is that was there like a moment where you said, that's what we're trying to avoid, so we're recreating it.
Yeah. I think we needed to go through that stage to learn enough to be able to step out of that place. But yeah, that it was only half a solution before.
Okay.
It was better than being a standard, wholesaler or retailer that's just buying, holding, and selling. So the standard supply chain is what I call a push to market model, right? Where what they do is they will buy in bulk from farms, and then they will hold that product and then push it out to market and hope that people will come and buy it. And then they've got to factor in waste, they've got to factor in double handling and all that. Whereas in our model where we were still the intermediary, we at least made a step toward what we call a pull to market model, where we were selling the produce and the food before it was harvested.
Yeah.
And so we only received what had already been sold. And so it was a single touch.
Yeah.
It was in and out on the same day.
Yeah.
There was no waste because we didn't buy anything that we hadn't sold.
Yeah.
And so we half solved the problem, right? It was a half step. And it took us 10 years to do that half step, because when you're dealing with lots of small scale farmers and lots of retail customers, you come across so many edge cases, so many situations where that doesn't fit the model. And you've got to adapt your model to be able to accommodate for all these different variables, which large-scale food systems won't tolerate those variables. They'll say, look, you have to do it this way or you're not playing at all. And where we had to say, well, we'll accommodate the way you do it because you're an independent, individual, autonomous person, and we respect that. And we know that we're not going to change the way you work. We'll create a flexible model. And so that's how the model has been evolved. And it on the surface, it looks quite simple, but when you really dig into all of the different things that the software can do, it's really quite sophisticated. It really can handle so many different edge cases that you wouldn't think it would need to do. But that's where when we then take the software and present it to a small scale grower, as a solution for them to be able to go direct to market. During our demo, they fire so many questions. Oh, well, what about exclusions? What about add-ons? What about if someone's living outside of the normal delivery area? What about this and what about that? And we're able to say, yep, this is how it solves that. Because it's done well over 1 million transactions now. So it's only through that 10 years of doing it that we figured out how to solve all those little niggly, idiosyncratic problems.
Yeah.
For this particular model.
Yeah. I really want to come back to this, but I also want to go back in time a bit. And that's because I think when you consider your origin story, which I know a little bit, I watched your TED Talk and some other things online. You come from a really business perspective and like a global business perspective of supply chain.
Yeah.
So to get into that, I want to ask you, what does the year 2008 mean to you?
Yeah, 2008 was the road to Damascus experience, right? It was kind of, for me, it was a real wake-up call, because in that moment, I kind of, firstly, we had just moved to New Zealand from Australia, so we were starting a new life. My son was born, and at the same time, my business, which was trading, buying large-scale, sort of mass-produced pastries in freezer containers from Europe and shipping them through supermarkets around Australia. That had just capsized because of the global financial crisis. The exchange rates had spiked. We went from making profits to making losses overnight. And even when we were making money, it was not fulfilling, from a personal purpose point of view. So that was a really, when I think back, it was actually a very challenging time because I had to rethink my whole worldview around what am I doing here and how am I doing it, and I had to let go of of something that had been working so well, financially for me. But what it also did is it sort of woke up a part of me that had always been there. Like I grew up on a small piece of land. My mum was friends with Bill Mollison, the permaculture guy.
Wow.
So we had my childhood wasn't off the grid, but we had a toilet that you had to carry out every once a week, and Dan the Pan Man would come and collect it. So my roots were in small scale, independent sort of grassroots. But as I became an adult and got into business, I got taken away by the dream of make money at all costs, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, 2008 was just a revolution for me, personal, and it was about, right, we can take all the things we've learned in large scale, high volume, long haul food supply chains and apply that to solving small scale, local, regional, independently owned, decentralized supply chains. And really, since 2008, the realization I had then hasn't shifted at all. It's still the same. It's still the same motivation, and that is putting small scale back at the heart of the food system. How we've gone about that it's been a journey, but the same purpose has been there right from the beginning.
It's interesting. You actually answered a big question that I had in my mind without even knowing it, which is like the fact that you went from being this big kind of business supply chain guy with a global business, and as far as I understand, I think making good money at the time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, definitely.
To somehow make the switch where you knew that small scale farming or just small scale business and community was the answer, I was like, he has to have had a personal experience close to that, because most people, they don't even know it because they never experienced it. They don't realize that that's important.
Yeah.
So I was like, what was it? Like he had a friend or he had a local farmer, and it seems like a big part of it was actually just you had that as a child.
Yeah, as my mum, she was sort of the driving force behind that way of thinking.
Was there also something else, like a farm that you knew of that you had experiences with, and you kind of saw that beautiful?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't so much a farm. I think actually the genesis of the idea about helping individuals reclaim independence and helping to facilitate people helping themselves rather than being dependent on a bigger system. That idea actually came from my mum in 1989. In Australia, we were going through what they called the recession we had to have. And interest rates were up at like 17, 18% on a mortgage. And we were going through a time when people just could not get work. Tradespeople their tools were lying around, they couldn't get jobs, and it was really difficult. And my mum just couldn't understand it. She was like, it just doesn't make sense that all these people are there with all these skills and time available and tools, and there's people who have things to be able to provide, and there's people who want things, but they're missing the medium of exchange because the interest rates had gone up so much. Everyone was shelling out all their money just to pay interest. And so she was like, that's crazy. We surely we can just barter. Like we can just bypass money, right? But of course the problem with barter is that you've got to have what the other person wants and vice versa. So she came up with an idea called the barter directory, and it was a telephone book. This is before the internet, right? It was a telephone book where you could write down on a piece of paper what it is that you could offer, and write down some ideas of the sorts of things that you would be willing to receive in return for what you could offer, and put your phone number and send that in with $5, and your entry would be put into the telephone book, and then you'd be sent a book, right? And so people would then, with their book, they would look up, I need my hair cut, or I need my lawn mown, or I need my bathroom tiled. And they'd find plumbers or tilers. Oh, there's a tiler. Oh, look at that. He wants bookkeeping work done. My husband can do that. And And so we started that, and that was back when I was 18, 19. So it was the first sort of look into, you don't have to play within the rules of the system. You can do things outside of the system, and it's exciting to play outside of out of bounds, right? There's something about playing out of bounds.
It's exciting, but it's also challenging.
It's challenging
because you need to reinvent everything,
and
sometimes.
also you piss people off.
Yeah.
Like this was a moment that I still remember so clearly. We had 2 black cars drive down our driveway.
No.
And people came out from the ATO, the Australian Tax Office, and they knocked on the door and they said, is Karen Russell here? I'm like, Mum. So she came out and they said, look, they held up one of the books, right? They said, we've got this, and you're facilitating a black market. And so, we're here to investigate and find out whether you're liable for tax evasion. Right.
Wow.
So we ended up solving the problem by saying, well, we don't know what anyone's doing. Like, we don't know who's calling who. We've got no record of what trade's going on. We can't possibly, and so we said, why don't you write a letter that to the people who are buying the book, explain to them their obligations from a tax point of view, and we'll put it in the front of the book. And so they did, and we did. You come across when you play out of bounds.
Yeah.
You hit up against things that you don't know exist until you do that. But there's something invigorating, I think, and this is what you're doing and what we're doing is we're playing out of bounds.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need right now. The system, the playground that we're in is so many things aren't working in there, and we're only in there because we've got this mental. We've been indoctrinated to that's how we play the game. But man, there's a way better world outside.
Is your mother still around?
Yeah.
And what does she think about Ooooby?
Oh, she loves Ooooby.
She loves it.
She loves. I mean, really, Ooooby is just the child of the barter directory. Really.
That was actually a follow-up question I had.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Was her creativity in creating a project like that and organizing also, was that part of what made you interested in business? Like, seeing a problem and putting together a solution that's kind of systematic, or it's like a
Definitely. In fact, I took over the running of the barter directory a couple of years into it, and got really excited by it. But then what happened is the recession faded, the recession ended, and people didn't want to barter anymore because they could use money, and so it just sort of faded into oblivion. But and then the internet came, and in fact, the very first idea of Ooooby was actually, the barter directory on the internet. But what I realized was that Ooooby originally was out of our own backyards for anything, right? We're going to look after ourselves out of our own backyards. It could be any goods or services.
Yeah.
But then I realized, that's just too broad and too hard to get traction. And it's like, so what's the hardest thing to facilitate a sort of an alternative economy around? And the hardest thing would be food, because it's perishable. It's, it's like it requires different handling and so forth and everything else. And so if we can solve the hardest thing first, and it's also fundamental to everything else, then maybe one day in time that it can, Ooooby can expand and, become more of a facilitator for just local and, trade, local economies in general. But food is fundamental, and until the food part is really working, it's no use trying to think outside that.
Plus, I would say that the food system is so broken,
right?
That you kind of need to have some people that say, okay, I'm going to tackle that problem, because it's so centralized.
Yeah,
it's so consolidated, and it's just like all these pieces are. It's like most people that are perhaps not around us or here, because here is a special place, as you saw last night.
Yeah.
But where I grew up, like, people don't really understand that they're part of a gimmick where they don't have access to a lot of fresh stuff, really. It's like, the produce moves from all around the world, and they're probably paying more than they should.
Yeah.
And there's people that are making huge amount of profits over this trade.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not the farmers. And just like that whole concept, like, for so many people, they're just not aware of that,
Oh, I wanted to actually ask you, I've heard you talk about it before. Could you actually explain the history of supermarkets, like pre-World War II to after? And because it's kind of like he has a nice way of explaining like how we got to this place where the supermarket is the way to get food and how it's, of course it's broken.
Yeah, I think supermarkets sort of emerged as a phenomenon after World War II. So the way I frame it is there's pre-World War II, there's post-World War II, pre-COVID, and then there's post the whole COVID thing. And that World War II and COVID are kind of both very disruptive moments within societal structures and so on. Pre-World War II, the dominant shopping paradigm was you would go to your local grocer and you would buy everything over the counter. Like you grew up, most of the food you grew at home. You had chickens. Everyone had chickens and a veggie garden and so forth. But the things that you didn't produce at home, your cheeses and your milks and a lot of your meats and whatever grains and so on, you just go to the local grocer, give them a shopping list. They go at the back, they put it all into a thing for you, and then and home you go. Post World War II was also, the Green Revolution, right, where we started to see just masses of food being produced, and alongside that came this idea of if we can capture like most of the people within a community to get all their shopping within a region rather than just a local high street, and we can put everything in one place, and we can get them to do the work of picking it off the shelves and putting it in a thing and so forth. Two things. One is we can buy in much larger quantities, which now there are mass-produced food going on, so we can get the economies of scale. And two, we can effectively externalize our packing costs, right? Which means the food can be cheaper, which means we'll attract more people, and this flywheel effect will occur. And the idea was price, convenience, and awareness were the three pillars, right? We got to get the price down to cheaper than ever. We've got to get convenience up, and we've got to make everyone aware of it. And so the price they got through economies of scale, and cutting back a lot of the handling costs. The convenience they got through putting everything in one place. Right, so you as a shopper, you can just get way more than you can get everything from one place rather than have to go from place to place, the local baker and then a butcher and this and that. And the awareness was about we put this big honking building right in the middle of town, which no one can miss it. Right, so everyone's going to know about it and everyone's going to talk about it, and it's like a white elephant. And so that's how that became the dominant model. And over the decades, it has just claimed more and more market share. And all the small scale and high street shops have just slowly, we've seen it. I mean, we've seen it in our own lifetimes, right? Yep. The decimation of small scale businesses to the point now where you can really only exist as a small scale business if you offer a boutique sort of premium offering. Right, which is for the people who've got the means to have that, that experience. So, but with the whole advent of COVID, what I believe that did is it's now shifted from the supermarket being the dominant shopping paradigm to online being the dominant shopping paradigm, because people who never would want to shop for their food online were forced to shop for their food online, and then they realized, well, that wasn't so bad. Wasn't as, I always felt like I wanted to touch and feel the food that I was going to put in my trolley, and but they realized that it actually worked okay. And they also realized that a lot of the supermarkets were, failing in making sure that they could actually get the food to the people. So a lot of people who started looking at alternative places to get their food, and it forced them to think about other ways of buying their food. Like in the UK, we saw CSAs and veg box schemes and food hubs. They went 3 to 4 times their usual volume in sales when at that time. And the sales haven't dropped back down to where they were before. They've dropped down to like still more than double what they were before. So we're now, I think where we are now is that we're at the beginning of the new paradigm. And that over the next 10 years or so, 10 to 20 years, could be sooner, I don't know for sure, but it'll be different in different places. But that more and more people are now starting to realize, oh, I'm just going to shop from my phone. But the great thing about that is before supermarkets controlled the real estate, they owned the car parks, so they owned the building in the center of town, and that was a barrier to entry. Right? That was their moat. No one else could have that real estate. But now the real estate is your 13 square inches in your pocket. And we, small scale producer has the same access to that real estate as the supermarket does. It's just a website. And so it means that it's leveled the playing field. And it also means that people are now getting the same level of convenience that they would at a supermarket. And because the supply chain is so much shorter and more simple, and the growers actually owning and controlling their own supply chain, is very price competitive, right? So price and convenience are now the two pillars that I believe have now trumped the supermarkets. The last remaining thing is awareness, right? And and awareness comes with there needs to be enough of these small scale food hubs, largely farm based small scale food hubs out there to be able to provide access to the bulk of the market. And there needs to be enough of a noise and enough of awareness driven for people to go, oh, that's actually a better option. I'll get better value for money. I'll get more nutritious food. I'll feel like I'm contributing to a solution and I'm not sacrificing anything for it, right? I still get it delivered to my door or whatever. So I think, the fundamentals are there now for supermarkets to be on the decline and centralized food to start be on the decline and decentralized online food to start to pick up become the dominant paradigm.
This episode is brought to you by Bootstrap Farmer. Bootstrap Farmer is an amazing company. It's focused on making high quality, durable, and ecological products for farmers and gardeners. They really stand out for me because one, they manufacture their product right in the US instead of relying on overseas factories. And two, they're focused on durability and sustainability. This means no single-use plastics that you have to rebuy every year and no cheap, flimsy metal that won't last. Their hoop house kits are among the best out there, made of super thick galvanized steel that will stand out to the elements and last you a very long time, I guarantee it. And their seeding trays are absolutely indestructible. Believe me, we did a test here at the farm. A car ran over the trays and they literally didn't even deform. On top of that, Bootstrap team is passionately dedicated to seeing the farming community grow and thrive. And that really means so much to me. That's why I do what I do here at the Market Gardener Institute. So if you care about what kind of companies you support with your dollars, check out Bootstrap Farmer. You can find them out at bootstrapfarmer.com. Thank you, Bootstrap, for all you do. Love you guys. See you soon. It's
so interesting, honestly, when I think about it.
Because Chris and I, we talk about that a lot.
Right.
But we focus on saying that this is the problem. It's highly centralized, but it's pretty rare that we really talk about a solution that's really out, except for the farms, multiplying the number of farms.
Well, yeah.
But, in our network, and even last night, I don't know if Modelen told you this, but for us at this point, it's like, it's easy to produce. Producing is not the issue. Like, we're good at that and we can show it to many people, and the work that we do at the Institute is that. But making sure that everyone can sell what they grow is, and then they're competing, we're competing against supermarkets, but then you have
price and convenience.
You have Ooooby that's there, and Ooooby probably, and there's others that are thinking about these things, and it's, so
it reminds me of Co-op Terroir Solidaire here. Like, we actually had a co-op here that was doing what Ooooby offers, but they actually are on pause for the moment because it was too much to handle for some of the people. But now I'm wondering, like, maybe if they use Ooooby, there's another potential here to bring that back. It was cool. Like, I used it at my home. You could go on their website and buy different meats from different farms and cheeses and get everything in a delivery. So literally, they were the food hub. But
well, it's the thing is the food hub model works. It's just very labor intensive if you don't have ways of automating the administrative side of it. Mm-hmm. It's the information part that's very labor intensive, and it's getting order accuracy and collating that into the right information, getting into the right hands at the right time, and that is actually, it all depends on what food hub you're talking about and the actual circumstances with each one. But an example is, Louise, who used to work with Ashurst Organics in the UK. She used to do 4 days a week admin work, and then when they moved on to Ooooby, it went down to 4 hours. So it's a massive saving.
Yeah.
And the customer experience went up because now the customers could do their shopping really intuitively on their phone. So it doesn't take much to get it from, it doesn't really work, to, now it's working. And once it's working, then it can happen over and over again,
Yeah, and I also wanted to note, the part that stood out in your whole story was the awareness part of supermarkets, like how it's this huge gargantuan building in the middle of town. And it's kind of obvious why that would have worked from an awareness perspective, and how hard it can be for a small farm or a software, an online platform to have that, because it isn't a building in the middle of town. No. So it's like a whole other, especially for the small farm, like, all we have these days, we're all on our Instagrams and TikToks, and like that's and word of mouth.
Yeah.
In small towns, especially.
You can go so far on your own building awareness to your local audience using, Instagram and things like that, or even, posters on bulletin boards and letterbox drops and things like that. But I think what we've experienced is that you really only connect with that small niche of people who are already thinking along those lines. Most of the people who aren't thinking or aren't aware of the bigger considerations, they're just blind to it. They'll see the thing in their letterbox and they'll chuck it in the bin before they've even looked at it, really. I think one of the things that there's a real opportunity for is how can you combine all the stories and all the voices of all this movement of hundreds and thousands of small-scale independent food producers into like a chorus, into something that is a real story that will cut through, that will get to that next tier, that next level of customers. And I think that's not something we started solving yet. Like right now, we're really focused on just building the digital infrastructure to help these people go from not being able to sell direct to being able to sell direct and make it a profitable enterprise. But the next stage is, how do we help them to grow and to really start to make a really decent living? And I think that's going to come down to what can we do to help tell the story of the movement, and how can we show, hey, look, there's hundreds of these people, in places around the country and around the world. This is a real story. This is a really interesting thing that's happening, and then you'll get picked up by interest, like media and places like that. Mm-hmm. That's the awareness piece that we need. That's what is really needed more than anything else. But if you try to do the awareness before you solve the fulfillment problem, it's only going to fail.
Yeah.
Right? You have to solve fulfillment before you solve awareness.
I've seen that in my farming career, like a lot of educators.
Right.
When you listen to what they're actually teaching, you're like, I'm not sure that you really know what you're talking about.
Right. Or they got the sequencing wrong.
Yeah, it's like you need to the proof's in the pudding. You need to do it before you can actually brag about it and help others.
Right. And it's not like selling, a lipstick or something, or, a television or something that you buy once. You're selling a recurring experience.
Yeah.
So if you can't, you can sell a promise easily.
Yeah.
But if you can't deliver on that promise every week in, week out, then they're going to come, they're going to try, they're going to leave.
Yeah.
and you got to get them to come, try, be amazed, and stay. And that's the trick. Is no use selling it until you can deliver on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you've recently moved into North America, right?
Well,
or are about to.
Well, we're here.
Okay.
We actually did for a while have a partnership with the Food Commons down in Fresno, in the Central Valley there in California.
Interesting place.
Yeah,
of all places.
Of all places,
to decentralize the food system in Fresno, California.
It was a little organic farm in amongst all these almond groves.
Oh my God.
Like square miles of almonds, and this little organic farm was the kind of the hub of it. T&D Willie Farms it was. And yeah, so we made the software available to them. This is years ago. This was our first sort of, foray into making the software available. But I think the problem there, it didn't last at that time. And one of the challenges there was that it was a not-for-profit. It was a grant-funded enterprise that it was working to have a business mentality. But I think, this has to be a business.
Yeah.
It has to be a business first. You have to look at these enterprises as they have to be able to make more money than they spend, and they got to be able to wash their own face. So that was a lesson we learned, because it ended up failing because it was spending money in lots of different areas that weren't focused on the core business. But yeah, so we have been in the States before. And so the software is all set up and ready to handle the currencies and the different tax jurisdictions and things like that.
Do you have any nice stories or examples of some farms or hubs in North America at the moment?
Well, we don't have anyone in North America using Ooooby yet.
Yeah, because it's just the awareness is not as there.
Yeah, well, this is what we're talking with JM about is, how do we make our product and the Ooooby model available to people over here. Yeah. And one of the things that we've realized is that we're not going to push into different markets. We'll go where we're sort of invited.
Be pulled.
Where we're pulled. Mm-hmm. We're pulled into, and we need local people on the ground who know the culture, who know the industry and who can sort of represent the Ooooby model in their region.
Yeah. That
we can trust, that understands the philosophy behind what we're doing, they're motivated in the same way that we are, to be able to say, right, I will be Ooooby, I'll represent Ooooby in this region. And then we have an agreement with them where we provide the digitals part of it, and they look after the sort of sales and support side of it. And that's how we can reach into new markets.
Well, so it brings up two questions to my mind. Let's do one and then the other.
Yeah.
The second question, which we'll get to second, but just so you know, is going to be about going through an example of how someone in North America could begin this. But first, could you just you have like a nice story of someone of a hub in the UK that you're proud of, or you find really beautiful, or something like that?
Yeah. Well, I'd like Soul Farm.
Soul Farm, yeah.
Soul Farm.
That's the farm that I went gave the workshop last spring.
Yeah,
it was a great.
That's a great example of it's Lawrence and his team. They just are so focused on reinvigorating the local food scene and organic, or it's not actually certified organic, but all ecologically sound production. Where they did a deal with an estate owner to get into their walled garden and start to produce some food, and then they started small. They started as a CSA, so the customers would have to pay for the whole season up front.
Yeah,
and that started to work, but it hit its limit, and then they moved onto Ooooby. And what they did is opened up the next tier of customers, of the types of customers that they could serve, because they went from being just a CSA to also being more of a casual veg box and casual shopping experience. And so, they were able to go to that next level. And I think what they really represent is a great story about how you can go from 0 to 1. You know, how you can start with an idea, get something happening, and then build on that. And now they've just done a crowdfunding campaign, so they've just raised some capital, and it's been successful. And so now they're investing further into it and continuing to grow their customer base. But they, you know, one of the things with Ooooby is it provides reports, right? Performance reports, and you can see their sales are just up and to the right. It's really encouraging. They're just growing and growing over time.
It's so cool because I listened to what you're saying. It's like, and I was there and I saw what they had done in a little bit of time, and then that's where I like to come into play, because what I'm observing with him and with them there, it's like now it's a production problem.
Right.
It's like because they have the markets and they're like, okay, we can't grow enough. We need to sell more. It's like, and that's where I can come in and really help, because that for me is like really the easy part.
Yeah, right.
But man, it's exciting to have a solution that helps you sell more and just find new customers and just kind of that there was this. It's not a warehouse, but they have like this common space where there's a lot of vendors that come together. It's like a food hub.
Yeah, it's like a sort of farmers market.
Experience, and that was like, man, that was cool.
Yeah, they got all sorts of things going on, and I think that's one of the things you know, if you're going to be successful as a small scale food enterprise, you need to be looking at different multiple revenue streams and multiple ways of it working until you get to a point where you sort of, you know, sort of an altitude, so to speak, where you've got a model that is the bread and butter, you know, that's really solving the problem. I mean, I think you're right. They went from having a production problem to get started. They had to have something to sell first, and then they went from to a sales problem. Yeah. And then they get back to a production problem. Yep. And then hopefully soon it'll be a sales problem again. You know, it's like the left and right feet, you know, having to advance it.
Yeah. And it was great because what we were seeing also when I was there, and that's where we met. Pete and I, last standing man at the party, at the bonfire. Everybody went to bed and it was like 2:00 and we were still having a little cocktail. Yeah. It was nice. But it was the community, because the community of growers, you remember, is like about 40 different farms that were there at that event together. And it's also bringing, because we're in a model where we're multiplying the initiatives and we're not consolidating everything into one big unit. That's where I think it also brings community together and small farms connecting through a hub. Yeah. So I like that. That's really what the ethos needs to be.
And that community, just from that event, you know, even this morning, they created a WhatsApp group, you know, called the JM WhatsApp group. And even this morning, this was how many months ago? This is back in September, was it?
Yeah, it was like six months ago.
And they're still chatting to each other on this WhatsApp group. Yeah. And, you know, and with Ooooby, we've got a WhatsApp group for all of the farms on Ooooby, and they're all chatting to each other. And because in a normal world, they'd be seen as competitors, but they're not, because they're all focused on their regions, on their local regions, and so there is overlaps, right? But you know, mostly they're just doing the same thing as each other in different places, and they could share so much knowledge. Like it's so valuable for them to feel part of that community, and just to know I'm not alone, and I'm in this together with others who have solved the problems I'm dealing with at the moment, and so on. Yeah.
And that's what small farming has that the supermarket doesn't. It's community, meaning, connection, all of these things we talk about all the time and that you know well.
Yeah, less supermarkets, more supermarket gardeners.
Supermarket gardeners.
Supermarket gardeners. I like that.
He's a catchphrase
I love the
guy.
other one. No, the one I've been using, JM, is we don't need more mass-produced food. We need more food produced by the masses. Every time that
true.
That's a JM quote there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good one. Something that stood out to me also was the idea of getting new customers, not just more of the same. Because like at the farmer's market, it's kind of a certain kind of person that's coming there. And I didn't really think about it, how this is actually just opening up an entire other like demographic of people that maybe they've never even gone to a farmer's market and it's not on their radar at all, but they are online shopping.
That's so true. And you know, I was at an event recently where someone, you know, explained the different motivations behind shopping from small scale or behind food shopping in general. And it's either a price motivation, right, or a convenience motivation, or a health motivation, or a ecological motivation, or a social motivation. And, you know, for most of the people who are already buying, you know, from CSAs and so forth, they're usually very focused on the social, as in the fairness to the farmer, right, and the ecological, as in it's not screwing our planet up. And that's the driving motivation behind why they do it. And so that's the niche that's already kind of captured already. Then there's a massive market that we're not touching really yet, and that's what people who are looking for food for their health. Like they've seen all the diet-related illnesses and so forth going on, and they know that if they can just get food that is really fresh, really nutrient dense and so forth, that they're going to be happier and they're going to be healthier, and they're right into health. But at the moment, that market's still being captured by
Whole Foods,
and these kind of quirky modern, you know, protein drink meal,
or important fruits,
superfruits, and
like
vitamins and minerals and things like that. But it's a massive market that are so like I think we only have to really tweak our messaging and get the style of the narrative right, and we can open that market up. And that's a big challenge because farmers are not master communicators necessarily.
Yeah, and they don't look all healthy. Some of them do,
Right, that's true.
but some of them, you know, they're hard worked.
They're
and an image in the community, like the health community. Yes, there's people that are about the message and about, you know, how they feel from the inside, but it's very, especially, I don't want to say in the US, but it's like, it's kind of on the fakey side.
Right.
If I can say that. Can I say that, Chris?
because I'm American.
No, not just like, not because of that, but because this is
yeah.
kind of like too generalizing, but you
I think I know what you're
like
saying.
Gwyneth Paltrow, she was talking about eating avocado as being this thing, and it's like,
Right.
really? It's like, is that what healthy is?
Yeah.
Eating avocado and kale?
It is interesting because it's true. There's a lot of people that are like, let's say there's people that are completely hooked on the idea of organic, like just that, like everything, all they think is as long as I'm eating organic, everything is good. I'm good.
Yeah.
But like they've never even been to a local farm or know of any around them. They're only getting these organic products.
Yeah, through these massive, mass-produced, you know, hydroponically grown and shipped all the way around the world, and
Don't get us started.
Don't get us started on hydroponic.
Don't get us started on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something that you were talking about raising awareness. Like I have the opportunity sometimes to be sitting in rooms where there's, you know, decision makers for the, you know, United Nations or whatever. And it's like, one of the things that I've observed is that it's really hard for anyone in that kind of space to think about small scale farming because there's not one unifying, message or data, or it's like, it's so spread out. It's
disparate,
not, yeah. And so just coming into this conversation and saying, hey, we have a network of, 10,000 farms and 4 million customers that are using our app, our device, our software, then you have the opportunity to be a voice.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that you should be a voice because there needs to be more people talking about the multiplication of small initiatives as a real solution to the food.
Yeah, I think that is. I think you're right. I think that's what it needs. It needs a chorus or an orchestra of and how they can all sort of maintain independence and autonomy. I mean, this is one of the challenges, right? Because we're trying to get away from centralized.
Yeah.
We want to decentralize the food system, but there are a lot of benefits to centralized things. Like, for example, if every one of the farms on Ooooby had their own complete instance of software, and you had to update every single one individually whenever you made a change, it would never work. So the software itself is a central digital piece of infrastructure. and we're aware of the irony of that. You know, one piece of infrastructure that's decentralized, one centralized piece of software that's decentralized in the food system. That's ironic, right? And you know, is that? But
do you think do you get sometimes like kind of like asked about that? And
well, no, not really. Not many people it occurs to them, but it's the truth. It's
I thought about it, but I didn't think negatively about it. I just thought, oh, it's interesting. This actually is sort of like a
yeah. So the key though is the problem with centralization isn't centralization itself. It's the control of that centralized thing.
Yes.
In too few hands who are not motivated by the same things that the users or of that centralized thing are motivated by. So they have their own extractive motivations.
Yeah.
So it's the way we look at it is it's like, okay, it's a decentralized food system on a centralized platform, but we want to decentralize the ownership of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talked to me about that.
So we talked about that around the fire is how do you distribute the ownership and the control across the user base, so that you get the benefit of a centralized software, but you don't get this exploitative, extractive type of situation where, now we've got 4 million, 10,000 farms and 4 million, and we can just like start jacking the price up and we can start extracting because where are they going to go now? And so I think that, challenge with humans, we're all good and evil, right? We're all a bit of both. But if you can create the conditions where you can too easily just extract, then you're going to tend to extract. So what we need to work on is an ownership model, a governance model. And we're using a model called steward ownership, which is a well-developed ownership and governance model to sort of split out the right to control and the right to reward and the right to sell or destroy. We break those three components of ownership out from each other. And then we lock away the right to sell or destroy, so that no one can ever buy the Ooooby platform, like Amazon or Unilever. It's not up for sale, right? And then
because that otherwise is an option,
right?
Like, Amazon could decide, say, "Hey, I'm just going to buy this."
Well, that's right. And in fact, anyone if you're motivated in this space by, hey, this small scale food's going big, and there's a real opportunity here, we're going to create a platform, get a whole bunch, and then we're going to sell it. We're going to flip it. I mean, it's a great business idea,
and I'm sure Amazon would buy it.
And they would buy
the moment
it
got big enough.
Yeah, it's a why wouldn't you? You've got the data, you've got the sales, you've got the supply, you've got the customers. So we've made a very clear, explicit promise that we're never going to sell Ooooby. There's never an exit for it. So we are raising capital, and there is an exit for the investors when they come in, because we do like a redeemable shares model where we buy those shares back off them at a good return.
Yeah.
But they're not going to get an exit where we say, hey, you buy in, shares are going to go up this, and then we're going to sell to Amazon, and that's where you get your money back is through a trade sale.
Yeah.
So we've locked that out. And then what we've also done is locked out the right to reward, as in your return on your investment, from your right to control. So if you're an investor, you've got very limited influence or very limited control, voting power. Any kind of voting power you have is only conditional upon certain things and only to a certain degree. Whereas the right to control is maintained by the sort of the core team that is building and driving and directing the enterprise.
The Market Gardener podcast is made possible by the fine work of the Market Gardener Institute. I started the Institute in 2017, and my objective then was to share a lot of the work that I had done on my farms, writing, researching, and to help empower and educate as many growers as possible. Fast forward all these years later, that's exactly what the Institute is doing. We offer online courses and resources to growers in more than 90 different countries. We have more than 7,000 students that have taken our classes, and it's making a difference. So that's really cool. If you want to get 15% off some of our select courses, it could be on winter farming, It could be on greenhouse production. Just use the promo code podcast15 and get 15% off. So now back to the show.
That model, you said it was steward
ownership.
Steward ownership, and that's developed. There's like a whole.
There's an organization in Germany called Purpose Foundation, and that's their thing. That's what they're really focused on. Is how do you create a new kind of ownership model, which isn't just extractive and exploitative, which still is for profit.
Yeah.
Right. It's still commercially sensible, and I think that's a really important thing. You don't want to remove that profit motive. It's still a business, but it's not. What it does is it limits the amount that you can extract from it for the purpose of extraction.
It's like designing a crop rotation in your garden.
Right.
It's like you're putting constraints so that you'll be sustainable over time.
Yeah, and we know that eventually, like one day I'm not going to be at the helm.
Yeah.
But I don't want to. I want to know that the rules are in place, that the ship's not going to get taken off somewhere else.
You can't just rely on leadership alone.
No, we got to put constraints, and then those constraints are built into the the Articles of Association and the Constitution. And you can build very, very high bars to being able to make any changes.
And I'm sure I know the answer to that. But all of this, was that let's say driven by you and your team, or was that a demand that you got? Because some people were saying, like, we want to join Ooooby, but you know what? I'm kind of sensitive to the fact that I don't want to be part of, your business exit in 10, 20 years. Like, that's not why I want to join this.
It's both. We right from the word go, we always made the promise that this thing wasn't going to be about Pete and his mates, being able to have a big exit one day.
Yeah.
And we've done different things along the way to demonstrate that. But having said that, it's also, I think that farmers in particular, especially new entrants, people coming into this space, a lot of them are coming into the space because they don't trust the system. They don't try. They're looking for another way, right? And they don't want to be duped again.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't want to go and say, all right, I'm going to jump on this thing and then build my whole business, all my revenues based and relying on this platform, and then someone's just going to go and sell it under my feet. And my whole idea of building independence and autonomy, for my family business is now somebody else's to do what they want. And that's why, so this model is all about the actual, users of the platform have a stake in the ownership of the platform. And so that it is like, in that regard, it's like a cooperative. It's not a traditional cooperative structure, but it has a similar type of thing where you as a user of the platform have a stake in the platform.
I was going to mention cooperatives because it's really interesting to hear this, because I think a lot of people have done cooperative models, and I think most people view cooperative as the only other option from like being a corporation. I've done it in the past. I was part of a cooperative, but now I'm seeing like another option that's kind of similar.
It's similar,
but it's also different, and potentially it solves a lot of the problems that cooperatives often run into.
Yeah, I think the big problem that it solves around cooperatives is it's still, I think one of the challenges with cooperatives and with democratic type of business models is that it often devolves to the lowest common denominator of thinking, right? It gets decisions are made on what are popular and what everyone can understand. So you might have, maybe just a handful of people who really deeply invested in and have really understood all the idiosyncrasies of a particular business model and a market and so forth, that would make very different decisions than a group of people who that's not their main business. They're farmers or they're drivers or they're this or that. And so what we've been thinking about for a long time is how do you get the benefit of shared ownership, but without the downside of lowest common denominator decisions. And so the way that the steward ownership model works is the founding team and the executive and sort of business team they're the ones who make the decisions, because they're the ones that have built it to where it's at, based on the insights that they have, the access to information they have, the experience that they have, and they're the ones making the hard decisions that where the answers aren't obvious. And so it's about meritocracy in that regard. Mm-hmm. But they don't. But in having that position doesn't reward them out of proportion with the value that they're putting in. But it does mean that you're getting the best of the brains to try to maximize how far this thing can go.
Yeah, it sounds like a government. That sounds
Right,
like,
of sorts.
that's how it should be run.
It's obviously of sorts.
People elect people that are going to run it.
Right.
And the elected people are accountable, and you want to pay them well.
And you want to pay them well, and they got to know this stuff.
Yeah.
Like they've got to actually know this stuff, not just be popular.
Yeah.
That's the key. Is which is hard. I mean, I think that nothing lasts forever. Everything has its cycles of its birth and its growth and its plateau and its death. And I don't think I think everything's going to do. I think our Ooooby is as well one day is going to go through its cycles. But the goal is how do you extend that as far as you can and make get it to reach as far as it can. Maximize its impact and maximize its endurance.
Yeah.
And so you can only do your best. Right? You put the constraints in place, and somehow one day possibly things will change in 20, 30 years, but we can't make perfect, right? We just make the best we can with the best information and insights we have at the time.
Yeah. Also related to this is the choice of open source. Can you why is it that Ooooby is not open source?
Yeah.
For instance, I'm sure some people might be wondering that.
Yeah, they are. There is a big question about open source, and we made that decision a while ago. The main reason we're not open source is because it takes time and energy to manage an open source project. And you naturally have opened the doors for people to come in and take the code and then ask questions and do things with the code, forks and so forth, that can diffuse your energy. Right? And then not only that, you've then got to become really expert in understanding your different open source licensing rules. There's not just one open source contract. There are multiple different versions of open source, and they have all different nuances and different outcomes that their circuits, And then you've also, if you're going to have an open source thing with rules, you then have to have the ability to police and monitor and prevent for people from not using it in a way that you've set it out. So someone could just take the code, read the agreement, or not even bother reading the agreement, and just do with it what they want to do, and it could be completely counter to what the open source agreement's is. But what are you going to do about it? Oh, now we've got to get a lawyer, and we're going to have to go and sue them. So it just opens you up for being able to do less because your energy is dispersed. And so what we decided is instead of having open source software, we're going to have open ownership of the software.
Yeah.
And that
makes more sense.
We can focus all our attention without getting distracted by someone saying, "Oh, I've got the code and I want to do this for, but how do you do this thing here and how do you do that?" And
it's already so hard to manage a team. Imagine if anyone can jump in the ship and say, "Hey."
Right. And then there's the other difference is that we want our developers to see that the work that they're doing, we want them to stick around.
Yeah.
For the long time. And the longer you've got a developer in the team and working on the project, the more valuable they become over time because they're building up domain expertise. And they're starting to really understand how everything connects with everything else. And so the decisions they make, the software decisions they make is they can put out a better quality product. Whereas if you've got someone sort of coming in and saying, "Oh, I want the software to be able to do this thing that it doesn't already do," they'll create a patch and they'll create a thing that plugs into the other thing so it does that thing. But then if this thing changes here, then that part breaks, and then who's going to maintain it? And then they're off onto their next project. And so you're kind of left with this big hairball that no one really understands the whole thing. And then it's not really a high quality user experience, which at the end of the day, I think one of the most important things about this type of software is when a new person turns up on the page, they like feel comfortable straight away. They're like, I know exactly where I am. I know exactly what I'm trying to do. And there you go. I just did it, and it was so easy. That's the hardest thing to get if you don't have a really solid and aligned team that really understand all the intricacies of all those UX decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it has to look like other online shopping experiences, kind of, right? That's the idea. They feel comfortable because they think, I've been here before.
Right, I've been here, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
Right, and it's not only got to look like them; it's got to keep up with them. Because 5 years
things
ago,
are changing.
Amazon 5 years ago is different to Amazon today, right? And Amazon in 5 years' time is going to be different to Amazon today. And so we've got to not only be as good as they are now, we've got to be able to keep up with. So with the whole advent of AI and things like that, we're like, how do we make sure that we're not going to be just left behind?
Do you want to look at the Ooooby page, and we can? Because what I wanted to ask was about. Let's do a case study of if someone here where I live wants to get involved, like what's kind of the process of how this might work. So let's just say someone has heard about Ooooby.
Yeah.
They're like, that sounds good for me and my community and my farms or my friends.
Yep.
Where do we start?
Right. Well, there's two ways you'd find out about it. One is you would find out about the farm in your local area, and because of they've been at an event or they've put a letterbox drop in your letterbox or something like that, in which case you go straight to their website. Another way you'd find out about is you'll have heard of Ooooby, this place where all the small scale farms are, and where you can. So let's assume we're going down the second path. Okay. So you've heard of Ooooby. Now at the moment our software is really or our website I should say, is really focused on attracting new small farms and food hubs into the network.
And that's what I'm wondering about. I mean, like, how does a farmer here
get
started up with Ooooby?
Great. Okay. So if we're talking about how does a farmer get started up with Ooooby, well, first they go to ooooby.com.
Yeah. And we have it here. So if you want me to click anywhere.
First, I mean, here we are. You land, sell small scale food online. And we, in terms of veg box platforms in the UK, we're quite UK centric at the moment. We do have hubs in Australia and New Zealand where we started out, but we're very UK centric. But we are by far, the leading veg box platform in the UK now. If you can see there, what it does is it helps. Ooooby's an online platform that increases sales, simplifies packing, and optimizes deliveries. They're the three main things that we will do for you.
Yeah.
And so if you scroll down, you'll see how it basically works in cultivating customers and where they can create an account and so on. And it just tells a bit of a story as you scroll through. So ultimately, really what the goal is, and here it talks about joining a food movement or joining a movement. And you can see there that you're one of a whole network of others doing the same thing, which I think is a really important part of why people are coming to Ooooby is they want to come where others that are in their shoes are also. So again, it's very UK centric at the moment, but we are looking here into North America, and so the main thing is you want to book a demo,
okay,
right? And what happens? You click on the book a demo, it comes up. Well, you can click on it, see what happens. Hopefully, this will work.
Hold on, no, that was just.
There we go. Yeah. And then you can just find a time on the calendar and book in a call. And the reason we have a demo is because we're not just selling you just the software. What we're doing is we're explaining to you how the model works, and we're walking through the software, all the different things that it does, and the sequencing of everything, so you can see how it applies to your business. And also we have like a lot of experience in this space. As I've said, we've been doing this for up to 15 years now. And so we're not only providing you with software, but we're also providing you with insights and ideas and, advice if you're looking for that, on ways you can do things that are going to maximize your probability of success. So that conversation, that demo is more than just showing you some software. It's about building a relationship and about understanding you and your situation and you understanding us and our situation and seeing how those two mesh together and whether there's a fit. And it's not that everyone who wants to use Ooooby is a right fit for Ooooby. So, for example, if you're not practicing ecologically sound production methods, we don't want to be the platform for you, right? If you're just about spraying with everything with Roundup and it's all about pretty looking food and so on, go somewhere else. The thing about Ooooby is it's small scale predominantly, and it's ecologically sound. It doesn't mean it has to be certified organic, but it does mean in the hub agreement. So once we've done a demo, and if you're interested, if you think, hey, look, this actually feels like a fit, then we send you a hub agreement. And that agreement, it's in plain English. It says these are our expectations. These are what you can expect from us, and this is what we expect from you. And one of those things is there's a schedule in there that says about ecologically sound practices, right? And also about that you don't exploit people. You're not farm workers and so forth. And so for you to come onto the platform, you got to sign off on that and agree to those principles. So it's a two-way conversation. And there have been businesses where we've said it's not the right fit. Typically, like at the moment, because we are in a growth path at the moment and we're growing quite quickly, we are starting to really monitor and manage a lot of the sales and onboarding challenges that we're dealing with. Because we're right now, there's about 82 active farms on there, but we've got another 35 in the onboarding process. So we're in parallel trying to onboard 35 new, and then there's more coming in all the time. So we're dealing with that growth, challenge, which we are working on, and we are reducing onboarding time, and we are getting faster at it. But what we found is we're monitoring, and we're getting 62% of people who look at the demo end up coming on board. So it's a fit. It's a really good fit for people who are producing and trading in small scale local food.
Yeah, and from there, let's say they're down.
Yep.
What does kind of the next steps look like for that individual? Like, do they need to decide to be the hub, or do they need to find someone else? Like, let's just say they're a farm.
Yeah.
And, maybe they have some other farms nearby. They've talked to their friends maybe about, like, what are kind of the next steps in the process?
Yeah,
potentially?
Essentially they would either be the hub themselves, and in most cases that's what they're interested in being. So it would be, okay, I've got the digital infrastructure now. I need to make sure I've got a building. It could be a barn, or it could be a shipping container dropped into a farm. That's your packing. That's basically your packing hub. I'll need some boxes, and I'll need some scales, and I'll need some benches or rollers or whatever, depending on how many customers I've got. And basically just get the basic equipment that they have. They load their products up onto the site and the prices. They talk to their neighboring farms and they find out what they can buy from them and what the prices are, and negotiate all of that. And they basically populate the website with their offering. And then we do that with them. We help them with that. And then once they've populated with all their offerings, then we turn the website on. It's there. It's called theirs. So it's it's Bill's Amazing Veggies, or it's Mary's incredible artisan local food, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's their own URL. It's their own brand, and we turn on their site, and then they can go about promoting it, and they can do that through social media. The search rankings are always very good from day one, because Ooooby's got a lot of Google juice. So if you set up a hub on Ooooby, within a week or so, you're usually sitting at number one. If someone Googles up, organic home delivery or local food home delivery or, veg box or we very quickly get to the top. But then you've got all your social media and also we recommend that you definitely want to have in-person events that you are at if you're building up a local, your first customer base, your first 50, right, customers, they'll tend to be your best, longest standing and most, loyal customers because they're the ones that are already hungry for you and they've been looking for you or you don't have to do much to find them. But the best place to find them is events. Go to farmers markets and have a display at the farmers market. Go to, school fetes and fairs and so on and then, get some posters up. That's a great way of getting your first 50. And then from there, your word of mouth is usually will be your biggest customer driver, but then you can start to do other things, that you get creative around how you attract more customers.
And does the customer even really know that they're using Ooooby, or it's more like they're just using the website and it's, maybe it says powered by Ooooby?
It says powered by Ooooby. It's like from
Shopify.
A customer, like Shopify. Yeah, from a customer's point of view, they think that they're dealing with Bill,
Well, and they are.
And they are.
Just using the
And they're
software.
paying Bill, right? And Bill's delivering the food to them. So that is the experience. But so in a way, it's like Shopify. The difference between Ooooby and Shopify is that Ooooby is specifically built for this type of business model.
Yeah.
It's, most with Shopify, most of what you're buying with Shopify is the front end, the e-commerce front end. With Ooooby, that's only like 20% of what you're buying. It's the back end. It's all the logistical management and all the customer, management, self-service and recurring orders and bundling things and all of that.
I guess a final question on this process would be, you're the hub or the person in charge of the hub, and you have orders for the week. Like, what does Ooooby give you that you then look at and makes your life a lot easier in that moment to pack everything up and deliver it? I know you explained it a little bit in the beginning, but just because we're in this at the moment.
Yeah. So effectively what happens is typically most of your customers will have a subscription of sorts.
Okay.
Right. So they'll subscribe to usually a bundle of product, like it could be a small veg box or a whatever. Or they might subscribe to an empty box that they then fill up with, something that they want to get on a recurring basis. So if you know, for this season we're going to have plenty of kale, for the next 8 weeks or however long it is, right? You can put products on to be subscribable, and so people can basically curate their own recurring order. And then they'll, from week to week, they'll add things on. But what you'll be able to see with the recurring orders, you'll be able to see into the future, and you'll be able to say, right, I can pretty much see what I'm going to sell 3 months' time, right? So you've got that ability to see into the future. But the way it works on a week-to-week basis is you start out with the baseline of orders based on the subscriptions. You maybe update some of your products, update some of the prices, and then you send an email out to all your customers. And it says, right, orders are open, right? You've got until this time on this day to add anything or change anything to your orders, and it's got a link, and that link takes them to their dashboard where they can see what they've got already coming, and they can very quickly add other items. So that's what we call the sort of the sneak peek. We can say, have a look at what there is, and usually your sales will go from here to here as soon as you send the email out.
That's how I did it for so many years with the chefs in Montreal. Like I would send them the offer sheet,
availability list,
and then it's like they see the quantities too. So there's like boom, boom, boom. They fill it up, and then we harvest what was ordered,
and that's it. And so then you say, right, orders are closing off on Friday at whatever time.
Yeah.
As soon as you close the orders, the customers can't change anything at that point. You can change whatever you like, but it outputs harvest lists, purchase orders for your different suppliers, and then you go about bringing everything in that you've sold, right? And then it produces labels and packing manifests. So then you just start packing your boxes in whatever order makes most sense. So you might say, right, we're going to pack all the large veg boxes first, and then all the medium ones.
Could you see, Pete, that it prints a label that goes to delivery a service.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that you're not the one delivering to the home. It's
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you're part of another. I don't know. There's another group where they pool share.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
trucks
There's definitely those sorts of options. Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, there are each. I guess that's one of the things I talked about earlier is that we've had to adapt the model to fit with all the different various sort of situations. So in some cases, the farm will do everything themselves. In other cases, they'll outsource the deliveries to someone else. Right now, like in Oxford, for example, they use a bike courier, and so everything is ready for the bike couriers to turn up and load their bikes up, and they press the app and away they go. So yeah, you can sort of split it out into different sort of delegations.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it actually did that. Like I didn't know that it actually did.
Well, yeah, it does it. I mean, there are ways that you can either just output a delivery manifest that you can send across to them and say this is what needs to be delivered where and they can come and collect and deliver it, or you can give them a login and allocate them as a delivery person in the system, where they can use the optimized routing algorithm, which will tell them exactly what order to deliver them in to do the least amount of miles.
It does that.
Yeah, it does that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's
That's crazy because
cool.
like at the big farm that I used to run, we had 35 deliveries in a day, and actually, when we changed the routes, we would save an hour, 2 hours.
Oh yeah,
it's a big part of it.
Well, because if you get someone who only has a delivery every 2 weeks, right, or you've got a new person comes on or someone leaves or whatever, just a few changes can make a huge difference to what is now the optimal delivery route. Okay, so often what people will do is like, this is the way we go every time. And if someone comes and I'll put them in between this customer and that customer, or if someone leaves, I'll just drive past, but that can be very inefficient. Whereas this recalculates it every single week. It'll start from zero every week and say, right, here's your optimal. Then you can, if you want to, you can then manually tweak it yourself.
Yeah.
You can move customers around or you can say, no, I want it to be the same as last week. So you can do that, but your option is that you can say, every week I want to know exactly the most optimal order of deliveries.
Good job.
So cool. My last question on the model is and then on the business side on Ooooby's end, how does Ooooby make the money?
Yeah, so we just charge a percentage. So if you go to the pricing page, we just charge 2.5% of whatever you sell on the platform.
And it's just that.
And it's just that. And in terms, plus there is typically an onboarding fee.
Okay.
Where that is the time we spend with you to get you up and running and get all your products loaded up and give you all advice. And then the card payment processor. So that what we've done is we've negotiated really good rates with the card processors. So that you're paying a lot less than you would pay if you were to go straight to Stripe or PayPal or something like that. You'd be paying less than a third than you would normally pay. So, but that gets billed directly to you by the card processor.
Cool. Well, I have two changing directions here.
Yeah.
I had two little slogans or sayings that popped into my mind during our conversation, but I didn't get to bring them out. I want to say them and have your reflection on it. The first thing, while you were explaining supermarkets, it just made me think of this lyric from a song. The lyric is, "Progress takes away what forever took to find." And it was, and I feel like what is happening, and it also, when you were talking about the supermarkets, it made me think about suburban home building and like everything went through that process in mostly the 1900s of just becoming centralized and super duper efficient, economies of scale. And it's like what you've realized and what we all realize is we need to come back to the thing that forever took to find, which was just the things that are always there and always will be, which is like human connection, story, meaning.
Yeah.
So do you have a reflection on
brilliant?
I've
never heard that lyric.
From Dave Matthews, to give credit.
Right. Well, I love it. I love it. I mean, that sort of speaks to the value and the power of tradition. In terms of we developed our traditions through a heuristic over a lot of time. based on what works and what doesn't work. And I think that society has forever been on this path of discovering what doesn't work and having to regress back to what works. And I feel like what we've done over the last sort of 4 generations is because of technology, we've gone way faster off track than we have in the past. Like we've been able to go further off track than we have in the past because of technology and because of the power of money and the way that money is controlled and the way that money, the whole financial system is incentivizes behavior, that we've diverged from the path of longevity, of endurance, further than we have in the past. So we got further to come back. But I think there's a point, it's like, I don't know if you go to the beach, right, and you go for a swim and you got the shallow area and it's all safe and everything on the shallow area, but then slowly the sand drops away and it gets deep and there's a rip and it can get quite dangerous. And there's that moment where you're swimming and playing around and you kind of get to that point where it's like, oh, you get a feeling in your heart of like, oh God, I could be in danger here. I feel like we as a society are all in that space now going, whoa, this is feeling a bit unsafe. Like only a moment ago I felt fine and we were getting closer and closer to the danger zone, but it's all right, we're fine. Whereas it feels to me like more and more people are getting that feeling in their heart and in their chests of like, this has gone a bit too far. I really should start going home now.
Yeah.
Right.
Start going home. That's actually a powerful symbol right there. Like we're all going home.
Yeah, I think we need to. I think we're just going a bit too far. And what is home? Home represents everything we've been talking about. It's about good food. It's about connection. It's about feeling part of something that's bigger and more important than the excitement of the fancy new thing.
Yeah, it's about community. It's about ecology. It's
family.
about lifestyle, family.
Yep.
It's about being purpose also.
And we're missing it. I think we're hungry for it. Like we actually feel it. It's not just a mental thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it brings me to my second catchphrase, which was, well, I'll say it after, but first to preface it, I heard you, I think it was in a TED Talk, you gave the point that this solution that you're offering is actually good for all of us because we all want to sit around a table with loved ones and eat. And then it made me think of a phrase that I've had it in my mind for a long time, which is just food from friends. And the idea of food from friends is that it tastes better, it's more meaningful, you enjoy it more. It doesn't matter so much about how perfect it was, like from a culinary level or how well it was grown, but when it comes from someone you know intimately and you share it with them, it's such a deeper experience.
Absolutely. And
so like it's what Ooooby is bringing to the table is an ability to get food from friends so much more easily. And
that's beautiful.
You can steal it if you want.
I wanted those 3 very powerful words, food from friends.
Food from friends.
That's brilliant. Yeah, totally. And that's the thing. It's like if you like an example of that is you get a kid to plant their own carrot seed and then eat that carrot, they're going to think it's the most amazing carrot they've ever had. Because it's the placebo effect, right? So you add into it all the story and the meaning and everything behind it. It changes the flavor, and I'm sure it changes the quality of the food for your body as well when it's all aligned in a nice, very clear package. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add at this point?
No, I think
I was just going to do a couple rapid fires to close out.
Let's do rapid fires.
For it.
I like it.
And you can think up some if you want, Jam, but I have...
the word that I use is food grown with care by people who care.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
And I got that from Elliot Coleman, but I just think that sums it up so well.
Yeah.
It's like, food is medicine. Food is what we put in our bodies. It should be grown with the right intention. And the problem is that we're, when we want to do that, we're facing people that have organized it in another way.
Yeah.
So you're disrupting the food system with Ooooby, and I think it's pretty cool. It's what we need.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Rock the system.
Rock in.
Yeah. What book have you read multiple times, if there is one?
Multiple times. Related to this?
Could be anything. I'm just curious about what kind of
Right. I
things
mean, I think, a book that I've read multiple times that's not related to this is actually Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno.
Oh, the Sarno.
Yeah, that
I'm aware of it.
You're aware of it, yeah, but that's probably not related to this at all. But I think it's magical. It's incredible. I just finished reading the Sovereign Individual, which is a really interesting book. It was written in 1996 and incredibly prophetic of the way that things have played out. And there's a lot, I think, it's a much bigger topic than what we've talked about today, but what we've talked about today definitely fits in there. Oh man, I don't tend to read books twice, but I do listen. I listen to a lot of books.
Or is there a book that you tend to recommend the most or give to people?
Goodness,
if you can't think of something,
I can't.
that's
Not
fine.
off the top of my head.
It's a big question. I know.
Not off the top of my head.
He gave us two.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, yeah, you got two. Sovereign
gave us
Individual.
two.
Sovereign is an interesting book. It's a bit heavy at first, but once you get into it, we really
curious now.
And I think a book about back pain will relate to farmers and growers.
Oh, definitely.
So
and it's more than about back pain. It's actually a lot more than what it sounds like on the title.
What advice did you hear when you were really young, let's say in your 20s or teenage years even, that you only appreciated much, much later in life?
It's around family. The family matters most. I think when I was growing up, we moved around a lot. My dad was in the army, and so we moved around a lot. And we didn't really spend that much time with our grandparents, and but yeah, I think it's like every teenager rejects the notion of their family and wants to distance themselves from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's coming back to the realization that really that's your posse. That's they are the people that matter the most. Mm-hmm. And it's our biggest responsibility as well. I think your locus of control starts with yourself, and then extends to your family, and then extends to community, and then extends to the broader. But if you don't do them in that order, then you're kind of missing it, I think.
Yep. If home's not in order, what else is?
Yeah.
Actually, I think that does it for me. I just want to ask those two questions. I like
Brilliant.
I like
Thanks,
anything
Chris.
Yeah,
you wanted to ask?
No, it was cool to see you. Really, I'm happy that you came. Thank you
Thanks.
for taking the trip. And
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry. Is there anything you wanted to say that you haven't covered, or anything maybe you want to announce or anything like that?
I mean, well, firstly, it's been amazing. Thank you very much for having me. Here it's been JM. You've been on the radar from the beginning when we started, and the fact that you're still here and killing it is just amazing. It's so good to see. It's a real testament to this movement has got endurance. And it's going to endure for a lot longer. So that's brilliant. And it's a real honor to be in this conversation with you.
Well, it's an honor for me also.
Great.
Me too.
To be with Chris.
Great. Yeah, and that it is like, even though we've been going for a long time, like really we are at the beginning of something that is going to be absolutely massive. I can feel it in my bones. It's there is such an appetite for change in these younger generations who they can see what they've missed out on, and they're willing to go for it. And I think that the next 20 years we're going to see a very big shift that it's going to make the world a better place. Definitely.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up.
That's it, I think. Yep.
All right, everyone. See you next time. And again, thanks. If people want to know more about Ooooby, they can check out the website.
Yep.
And
Ooooby with 4 O's, right?
It's 4 O's out of our own backyards.
It'll be in the notes. Don't worry.
Exactly.
Yeah, perhaps invite people that are listening to the website to share it with their friends, so that we can to the podcast, so that people can.
Yeah, I would. I'm really hoping to see this start to come alive in North America where we live.
Yeah.
It feels like it's right there, about to happen. It just, as you said, it just needs
a spark.
the first,
the first step. The first step. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hope you're enjoying the podcast. These are important conversations, and we're really excited to have them and to share them with everyone. You can check out the work that we do at the Market Gardener Institute. You can check out our website, themarketgardener.com. Our mission is to multiply the number of small ecological farms around the world. And we do this by offering training, online courses to new aspiring farmers, but also to seasoned growers. We're helping them take it to the next level. So you can check out the work that we do. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up to our newsletter to get a lot of freebies about gardening, farming, but also about how small-scale farming is changing the world. And that's really what we're all about, and that's really what this is all about. So again, super excited that you guys are on board. We are changing the world.